Hey, welcome back to Laser Engraving 911. So on this episode, we're going to go over the steps to create an amazing debossed stamping blank for making wax seals just like this using the F1 Ultra. I'm going to take you through all the steps that I used to accomplish these amazing stamps. So if that sounds like something you want to get into, then buckle up, get your pen and paper out, because we're about to get into some stamp making on Laser Engraving 911. So step one, how do we start this process? Well, it starts with getting some images that we're going to convert into depth maps, which we're going to talk about in just a few minutes. But to get those images, I like to use Midjourney. If you don't know what Midjourney is, I'll list a link right here where I've already made a video on how to utilize Midjourney to create AI art. But what's specific about this project is the type of art that we're instructing Midjourney to create for us. It's a very specific prompt that's going to spit out very specific types of art, just like this. As you can see, most of these images look very similar in their look and appearance, and that's not by accident. I've made a prompt that allows me to generate these 3D images for the specific purpose of making these stamps. If you like that prompt, you can go over to laserengraving911.com, sign up for a free membership, and it'll be in the downloads area, and you can use my prompt that I'm using in Midjourney to create these baseline images. Now that we have our baseline images, it's time to head over to the next piece of software, SculptOK, and let's go ahead and show you what we do with that.
All right, so this is a really important step, and there are many different programs out there to create depth maps. Depth maps is in a nutshell, it is a way that the image that we put into it gets processed so that the laser can understand that there are different depths to the image so it can do the 3D engraving trick. Either the F1 Ultra can do, or you can do in Lightburn by selecting slices. It basically uses the grayscale parts of the image to engrave different slices away. It kind of slices the image into different layers and different power settings based on the shades of gray. First thing you want to do after you make an account is you're just going to go to right here, and you're going to add a new image. So we're going to go find that image that we just created. Cat, white background, ready for SculptOK. And we're just going to load that image in. Sometimes I've also noticed that you may have to refresh the page, but in the end, it does a great job. So you can see it loaded our image up there. Once you upload your image, you're just going to scroll all the way down past all this stuff, and you can just leave it on color image. You don't need to put in any prompts, and you're just going to click draw. It's that easy because we basically prepared our image in advance, so we don't need to use any of those other tools at this time in SculptOK. And what it's going to do, just like Midjourney, is it's going to start generating 4 different depth map options for you. And you'll notice as it generated the first one, that's kind of what we've been getting. And then the second one is even more detailed, which is crazy. And it just keeps getting better and better the more it generates. It just keeps refining these depth maps to the point where they're just absolutely stunning. So if you look at the first one, it's gotten some depth from there, then it's getting kind of, this is what we've been kind of used to with a lot of other software out there. And then it really starts to refine it. So this last one looks fantastic to me. I would go with either this one or the very last one for the most amount of detail. So all you have to do when you get the depth map that you want is you click download, and we're just going to save that as a PNG. It's really that easy. Let's go ahead and try to load in another image just to show you one more example of how well this software works. We uploaded our new image. So here we go. I love watching this process. It's just absolutely amazing to me to see how well this software works. Just an absolute fantastic job. Look at that. I mean, wow. It's amazing to see that we've gone from getting images like this or this all the way to this kind of stuff right here. So we'll go ahead and download that depth map as well. I will upload that on the site if anybody wants to try that depth map out. I'll put it in a zip file along with those prompts I was talking about, maybe with some other depth map images that I've created just so you can play around with. And let's go ahead and move on to the final art preparation step and show you how I do a little bit of refinement, but not much.
All right, so we've covered the part about how to make your depth map with SculptOK, an amazing piece of software. But there's one final step that is very important that you need to do. So whatever your graphic design software is, whether it's Photoshop, Canva, CorelDRAW, Affinity Designer, whatever it is that you manipulate artwork with, you need to remove all of the background of your depth map because we just want to create a transparent PNG of that file that we got from SculptOK. But most important, we want to make sure we invert that file. So in any of your software, there should be a button to invert the colors of the image because remember, we're not doing a 3D embossed coin, we're doing a 3D debossed piece of brass and making a stamp. So it's very important that you invert your depth map. So that way we are carving into the brass, not around the negative part of the brass. So as you can see here in the examples, I have my original depth map and then I have my inverted depth map. And it's transparent with the background removed. That is what we want to feed into the XCS software over at the F1 Ultra. And now that we've got that out of the way, I think we should head on over there and start using some of these depth maps. All right, so now we've done all that file preparation over on the computer. It's finally time to come over and use the F1 Ultra to make our wax seal stamp. So what I did was I went on Amazon and I got myself this little brass blank stamping kit, which I'll list a link to in the description below. It wasn't that expensive and it came with all kinds of different brass blank heads, ranging anywhere from about 1 inch by 1 inch squares to about 0.75 inch circles. And the cool thing about this particular kit is that you can actually unscrew the head so we can actually do the engraving. And that's what we're going to be engraving our awesome 3D depth map files on. So now that you've seen what we're going to be engraving on, let's go ahead and head on over and get into the software and I'll show you how to load in the files that we created so we can get engraving. All right, so out of all these different sizes, for the purpose of this video, I'm actually not going to pick one of the larger size stamps, even though I'd love to, because these ones take quite a bit of time and I'd like to work on the smaller sizes so we can actually produce a few different stamps for the purpose of this tutorial. So we're gonna go with this square stamp first. And remember that cool little cat stamp that we made? Well, that's what we're gonna put on here. So the first step we're gonna do is we're just going to unscrew it from the head and put it right in the middle of the F1 Ultra. And as you can see right here, we're not in focus right now. Those two dots are not aligned. So we want to use the focus button on the control panel to raise or lower our focus so we are actually in focus. So when the blue and the red dot are aligned, we're actually in focus. So let's go ahead and leave that there for now, and then we'll go over to the screen and import our art. So now we're back over here in the XCS software, and the first thing we want to do after we set our brass blank in there is we want to refresh the camera. So that is located right up here in the upper right hand corner, and we're just going to refresh that camera, and then we will see right in the middle of the screen our stamping blank. And we can zoom in there and see that stamping blank right there. The next thing we're going to want to do is import our art that we made. And I have it loaded right here. This is our inverted cat design that we did because remember, we're making a stamp. So it's going to come in really big because it's a super high resolution depth map. And we're just going to shrink it down to size. Wow, huge. Let's back out so we can see the whole size of it here. And I know that our stamping blank is about 0.8 inches by 0.8 inches. So I want to go a little bit smaller than that. So I'm going to make our art here 0.75 inches. And I'm going to make sure that the aspect ratio is locked. And I'm just going to hit enter. And there we go. Much better. So now we have our artwork. And we'll zoom in. I'm just holding Control and hitting the plus key on the keyboard. And then we're just going to align our artwork the best that we see fit. I'm going to zoom in a little bit more here. I might actually shrink that down just a little bit more, just so we can make sure it gets it all on there. There we go. I like that. Perfect. So I've got it aligned to the best of my ability there. The next thing we do is we need to pick our proper settings. So we're going to highlight the art. We're going to go up here and we're going to select what kind of process we want to do. And that is the embossment feature. And once we do that, we have to come over here to the right and select Fiber IR. And I have a predefined setting that I like to use, which I will upload to laserengraving911.com in the members download area. And you guys can try this setting out for yourself. I just call it Brass Emboss. And we'll select that and it gives us all the right settings for this type of engraving. So we're going to do 256 layers, a power of 100, a speed of 800 millimeters per second, one pass. And this, if we want to go a little deeper, we could actually bump this up to 300, but 260 lines per centimeter is just fine. Engraving angle is set at 15 and our frequency at 30. And we're not going to use the descend feature for this because it's not really necessary for the amount of depth that we're going. And that is all there is to it. Finally, we're going to hit process. And it's going to think about it. It's going to analyze the type of file that we put in there and come up with its best estimate for this particular job. Might take a half a minute or a minute. We'll see.
A little longer than a few minutes later.
And what you'll be presented with is an image like this. And don't worry if it looks pixelated. I promise you it will not come out this way. It will actually be really, 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 really nice. And even at this size, it is estimating that this stamp will take 1 hour. And I'm not surprised because we're going to be removing quite a bit of material. We've got the estimated time. We're going to go ahead and hit start and it's sending it over to the machine now. And then there's one final little tip that I want to point out to you that has been very helpful to me when making these stamps. So there it is. We've got confirmation that it's inside the F1 Ultra now. And let's go ahead and talk about that final tip real quick. So I went on Amazon and I got this little tiny air compressor pump. You've seen these, they're for small desktop lasers. It was not that expensive and I got some hose. And whenever I'm running these deep emboss or deboss engraves, I actually had this little piece of plastic hose and I rigged up this little Lego base with some putty to hold that stiff hose to constantly blow air across the surface while I'm doing the engraving to help remove all the brass particulates as it's being engraved. I don't know how you'll build your own, but these are the tools that I built to be able to add a little bit of an air assist when you're doing these kind of 3D engravings. It really makes a big difference. And I also have this really advanced method for holding down my air assist fixture. As you can see, it's taken me years to perfect this. No, honestly, I'm just like you guys when it comes to experimenting. I'm a mad scientist, and sometimes I just want whatever will work the quickest and most effective, and this gets the job done, and it didn't cost me a lot of money, and I don't really care what it looks like. I just want it to work, and it does make a difference. So let's turn on our air assist. You can feel that air blowing on there. Let's turn on our exhaust. Fire it up. And we'll go ahead and close that and let that do its thing and come back in an hour and see how we did. And then we'll talk about cleaning up the stamp after the fact, and I'll show you how I do that too. This cleanup pass is a little different, but it works pretty good. We're going to go to change this from embossment to process on a flat surface. We're going to highlight our art. We haven't moved our art, and we're going to select Fiber IR, and I have a little setting in here called Brass Cleanup. And we're just going to run this setting 5 times over the whole image with a really high frequency of 60. And I'll put that over at Laser Engraving 911 as well, so you can have these settings too. We're going to click Process, and this setting only takes a minute or so. It's just a light cleanup pass, but it's not the main cleanup. So it's 1 minute and 46 seconds. So we'll click Start. So another way that you can do the cleanup pass is by creating an exact size shape of the graphic that you just did and overlaying that perfectly over your graphic and doing a solid fill pass over it. And honestly, that's a great way to do it too. But for my purposes, this little bitmap cleanup seems to work pretty good because we still haven't shown you the final step. All right, so we are ready for our final step here. And obviously we want to clean this up as best we can. I have found that just using a simple ultrasonic cleaner with a little bit of brass polish solution and some warm water works great. Let me show you what I mean. We're just going to set that in there, pour some warm water in there, make sure that it's covering everything, and we'll even pour a little cap full of the brass cleaning solution. We'll set the timer to about 480 seconds, and then we'll turn it on and watch this. All right, so that was a little bit of a process. We tried to keep it as short and to the point as possible, but these stamps came out great. And the only thing left to do is to actually show you that they work and give them a shot. So let's go ahead and fire this little wax stamp sealing kit up, and it's actually very fun. So why don't I bring you in and we'll start to play with our stamps and we'll show you how they work. All right, cue the classical music. I figured that was appropriate for this since this has been being done for way many more years than I've been alive. What is the process? So you've got this little tiny wax pot here, and you can buy tons of different color of waxes all over the place on Amazon, every different color available. And once this little spoon heats up, it's just going to melt the wax. We're going to start with some gold here. And it usually takes a few minutes for those little chunks of wax. I usually put about 4 or 5, we found does really good. And it's just going to melt those little wax pieces. All right, so here is one of the stamps that we created. We've got Buddha here. This is one of my favorite ones, and I think that Buddha looks really good in gold. So now that we had our wax nice and melted, we're just going to pour a nice healthy blob right there, just like that. That's good. And then we found that if you wait about 30 seconds for the wax to just cool a little bit, we get a better result. So that was about 30 seconds. So I'm just gonna take this stamp, just gonna put that on there. All right, that's about 30 seconds, yeah? So we give a little tap and release that. Look at that. Look at all the detail in that. I don't know if you guys can see that the way I can here, but that is amazing. I think I waited a little bit too long, and that's why I did that little bubble up right there. But let's go ahead and try another one. So we'll just add some more red, and we'll just mix it in with the gold. We'll add like 4 little reds, and within just a few minutes, that will all be melted. And we'll try, I want to do the rose again. I really like that one. All right, I hope you enjoyed this fun little tutorial on how to make wax seal stamps with the F1 Ultra. Fiber laser technology is amazing, and whether you're making 3D embossed brass coins or you're making debossed stamps, it is a great tool. I'll list links in the description below on all the supplies that I used. If you haven't picked up an F1 Ultra, I'll list a link down there for that below. And as a bonus, like I said earlier in the video, if you go over and make yourself a free membership account over at Laser Engraving 911, I'm going to create a little zip file there with all the prompts I used on Midjourney. I'll actually throw in some ready-to-go depth maps that are ready to be turned into stamps if you want, and maybe some other files as well. So until next time, we'll see you around on Laser Engraving 911.